Well, we want to welcome James Busset for today's mini webinar about the importance of the STC salary database. For this topic, we're really lucky to have Mr. Busset, who is starting his second two-year term on the STC board as treasurer. James also chairs the Finance and Investment Committee and the Community Budget Review Committee. A veteran of STC member for 12 years, James was treasurer of the Southwestern Ontario chapter for 4 years, chapter president for 2 years, and treasurer of the Instructional Design and Learning SIG for 3 years. So James, thank you for today's presentation.
Great, thanks, Bob. Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for being here. As Bob said, we're going to talk about the STC salary database that was released last fall. Excuse me. Because we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to speak until about 25 minutes after the hour, and then we'll take any questions that people have. You can either save them up until then or type them into the chat box in GoToMeeting, and Bob told me that he'd be checking the chat box. I can't see it from my monitor, so that's another way to get questions to me. So first, a little bit about myself. Thanks for the nice introduction, Bob. A little bit more. I live in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. That's about an hour and a half west of Toronto, or about 2 hours northwest of Rochester. I'm employed as a trainer at ATS Automation. We make custom designed automation machinery, primarily for the life sciences industry, but we do get other clients from other industries occasionally as well. So I go out and train customers all over the place. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling in the next few weeks, actually. As Bob said, I've been treasurer for 2 years now. I'm starting my second 2-year term as of the summit. And things I like to do when I can make time are I like to run when the weather permits. I like to ski. I also cook, do housework, take out the garbage, all kinds of stuff. And well, that's just a picture of me doing something silly. But anyway, so the agenda for today, we're going to talk about the salary database, as we said, what it is, where it came from, what it's for, as in why you might want to use it in your particular situation, and also just how to use it. So let's begin. What is the salary database? Well, it's a fairly lengthy report, 185 pages, but a lot of it is reference information. The parts that would apply to you aren't going to be quite that extensive. There is some information in there that everybody's going to want to read, probably about, I think it's about 13 pages worth. But then after that, it's a matter of looking up the things that that apply to your situation specifically. It shows both employment levels, that is the number of people employed, the number of jobs that are occupied by technical writers in particular, and their wages. They're reported. Some tables are in hourly rates, others are annual salaries. So each table has both sets of information depending on your particular industry and how you get paid. The numbers are all based on statistics from a survey that's done each year by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, or the BLS. And the survey is called the Occupational Employment Statistics Survey. So you can Google that and get more information about the details on that particular survey. There's well over 1,000 different job classifications that they run these numbers for. The report was put together not by the STC, but by a third-party consulting firm that we contracted to do this, called Industry Insights. So they do a lot of this kind of research for government and for companies and associations. The current version of the salary database that you can get from the STC website was released last fall. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects data in a given year, and then it takes them some months to clean that up and run all the averages and put it together in a presentation form that other organizations like Industry Insights can run queries on. So every time we get a salary database, it's actually based on the previous year's data. And so just so you know, this particular version was released in 2018, so it's based on 2017 data. And also, I always like to mention sponsors when we have them because we appreciate them so much. The salary database was made possible through sponsorship from Adobe and from Writing Assistants. So you'll see in the salary database, you'll see some advertising from them on a few of the pages. I mentioned that there is about a dozen pages. There are about a dozen pages that that everyone will want to read, but the bulk of the salary database is made up of reference information in the form of tables, lots of tables. So it's a matter of looking at the different headings and seeing which ones apply to you. You can look things up by geography, and that's broken down to a number of levels of granularity. Numbers are presented at the state level, and then more granular than that at different statistical levels that marketers and census people use. Metropolitan statistical areas. There are a few non-metropolitan statistical areas as well. The same goes for industry. There's another section for different industries, be it, for example, the life sciences, pharmaceutical, versus information technology, publishing, publishing about software in particular. The industries are broken down by these, I'm trying to remember what this stands for now, North American Industry Classification System, NAICS. There are standard codes that people who do these kinds of surveys use to break down industries. And technical writers, we have our own code for this. The more digits in that code, the more granular the industry is. That is to say, something like publishing would be less granular than software publishing, for example, or pharmaceutical industry would be more granular, I should say, than life sciences. So generally, we want to get as granular as we can, but if you can't find a 4 or 5 digit code that corresponds to your particular industry, then you might have to go up a level to a broader category and get results that are averaged across more industries. At the end, there's also a section on different professions too, just comparing tech writers' salaries and compensation and employment levels to what they've deemed to be similar professions. So that includes things like reporters, correspondents, editors, PR specialists, and so on. So you can see how you compare across job categories like that. So who should use the salary database, and why would you want to? Well, there's a number of reasons why you might be interested. If you're looking for a job, you're new to the profession, you might be in a position where you can choose which industry you want to focus on, or you may have 2 or 3 that you'd find interesting, and you may have some background or expertise and feel as though you could apply your tech writing skills there. Also, different cities may have different employment rates. You might want to be looking to see how many tech writers are employed in Columbus, say, versus Cleveland or somewhere further afield. If you're already an employee and you've got a job, you might have questions about whether or not you're being paid fairly, or you may be thinking of approaching your manager with a raise request. And the salary survey is a really good source for solid facts to back up those kinds of requests. Also, managers, human resources departments, they're also very interested in knowing what the market rates are for various people that they employ, and the STC does sell the salary database to HR people as well, so they can get that kind of information when they're negotiating with new hires. And managers, when they're setting budgets or bidding on projects, they also can benefit from having this kind of information. Freelancers as well, consultants. It's always difficult. I did a little bit of consulting for a while a few years ago, and that's a big concern, is trying to arrive at an hourly rate to quote to somebody. Given your level of experience, what the industry is, what city you're in. You may be a freelancer who's quite experienced, but if you have a customer that's in a different state and that you're not familiar with, you might want to refer to this information also to see what that client may be more used to paying. So the salary database, one thing that it talks about is to regard the data that's in there as guidelines, not hard standards. I mean, I shouldn't have to say this, but you don't want to go to your manager saying, there's this number is in the salary database, and so you have to pay me that. No, it's not. It's not like that. These are just statistics that were gathered, as I said, in 2017 and averaged. Percentiles are calculated and so forth, and there are, a lot of different factors, as I'm sure you're aware, that go into your overall compensation package, and the amount that you're paid is just one of them. So, one of the big factors is your location. If you're in New York City or the Bay Area, your cost of living is going to be somewhat different than if you're living in a smaller city somewhere or in a non-metropolitan area. There are other medical, dental benefits, 401k plans. There may be something about the working environment, the travel time, the opportunities for overtime or bonuses that might be present in a given job and not another one. So they may balance against what the salary amounts are. You may have different vacation entitlements at different places. I once worked at a place that had unlimited vacation, which was kind of nice. But interestingly, people wound up not taking a lot more vacation than you would at most other jobs. But it was nice to have that flexibility, and certain people needed it. And also opportunities for professional development, and just basically moving forward in your career and taking advantage of opportunities to set yourself up that way. That's all. Though all these things are worth something, and all these things aren't taken into account in the salary survey. The salary survey is just about straight salary. So not only do the jobs vary, but also people vary. You want to be very objective and honest with yourself about your education, your experience, and comparing where you fall in relation to others. And we'll talk a little bit about more about that in a sec. So to use it, a number of steps that they suggest in the salary database. First, calculate your wages. As I said, the data in the salary database are presented just on straight time, your gross pay before taxes, before any overtime or bonuses that you would get, just your straight salary. That's what you want to use as a comparison here. And consider your situation too. As I said, be very objective with yourself. If you're relatively new grad with 1 to 2 years experience, you're going to be wanting to look at the 10th and 25th percentiles in the tables that are presented. If you're mid-career, average, or median, usually they're fairly close together, but not quite exactly the same. If you've got 20 plus years of experience and your advanced degrees in managerial, then you're going to be at the high end of each range. So make sure you focus on the applicable numbers. And think about the reasons that you're looking at the salary database. I mentioned earlier, you could be looking at getting a new job, or being new to the field, having to move to a different city, or just an employee content to stay where they are, but wondering if you're fairly compensated and how you compare. So There are a few pages in there that are worth reading for everybody. It's the executive summary section. It's divided up into an economic overview and report highlights. And there are key trends in there that there's some interesting stuff. It's fairly positive overall, I think. I think you just want to make sure that when you are looking at the data and you see a dip in 1 year or other, or decreases in particular industries or locations over time. I think 2016 there were small wage dips in a lot of the tables. Just point out that that could be a good sign or a bad sign. So just think about that particular industry and the context, because they could be from downsizing and layoffs and consequently a surplus of tech writers, or conversely, there's a lot of baby boomers that are retiring right now. So that could be the reason that you might see dips in employment levels. So think of that as an opportunity, not necessarily a bad thing. But I'll leave it to you to look at the particular fields, the particular cities, and think about which of those situations is the most likely culprit. So when wage dips happen, for example, that could be from experienced baby boomers being replaced by less experienced and consequently lower paid people. That's basically, yeah. Oh, sorry, there were a couple of points there. So look at the data for your industry and your geographic area. So that would be two searches. There are different sections in the salary database for those things. And see if they're very different between the average, if you're looking at those numbers, and the numbers that you get for your city. It could be that your industry happens to be a particularly high-paying one, regardless of where it is. So you might want to draw kind of an average between your industry and your geography. If you're somewhere like New York City or the Bay Area, where the city you live in makes a big difference in terms of, because the cost of living is so high that pay tends to be more, you might want to weight the geography aspect of that a little greater if that's appropriate. So we'll just do a couple of examples here, a couple of sample cases, and these are drawn straight from the salary database document itself. I'm just going to walk through them with you. So the first case, if you had somebody who's a tech writer with 2 years of experience, they work in a particular industry, we'll just call it ABC industry for now, and they live in the DEF metropolitan statistical area. So you see in the tables, you won't see the industry and the geography right next to each other like this, but they've pulled these two rows out so you can compare them one above the other conveniently. But you can see, being in that industry, this person should probably focus on the 10th percentile because they're new as tech writers, not a lot of experience. So here you can see both the industry-specific and the location-specific information. So we'll average those to get an approximate wage that this person might assume that is a fair wage for their experience level, their industry, and their city. So you've got 46,000, 59,000, average the two, and you get 52,600. So I think that's probably the simplest case. If we take somebody who's in a different situation, 15 to 20 years of experience, so they're probably mid-career kind of a person, but they also happen to have an advanced degree and a certification as well. So here they might want to focus a little bit towards the higher end of these ranges because they're mid-career, maybe average between 75th and 90th percentiles. So for the industry, we're averaging that 90,000 or close to 91,000 and 103,000 to get close to 97,000. The location in that JKL metropolitan statistical area, technical writers in that city, 75th and 90th percentiles are 97 and 115,000. So average those two numbers and get 106,000. So then the last bullet there, we take the industry average, the location average, and average those to come up with 101,000. So that is something that, again, give or take, and there are other, as I said earlier, other aspects of your compensation package that you should take into account. But that's the kind of number that if this person wanted to compare themselves to other people, that they'd probably be looking at. And finally, one last case. This is the same as the previous one, but let's assume that this person is living in Manhattan, say, and a high cost of living location. Rent is really high, as with other things. So what we can also do, instead of just doing a simple average, is to weight their location greater than the industry, because it has their location in this case would have a much greater impact on your salary expectation than the particular industry that you're working in, say. So in this particular case, we're taking that industry number from the previous slide and multiplying it by 25% and using a 75% weighting factor on the location average, and then adding those two together and coming up with a number that's slightly higher because of that weighting on the location. So this is just the previous one, so 101,715, and now with weighting, we've got 104,095. So you can get out your calculator, maybe get out an Excel spreadsheet, and and do some calculating. You might feel as though you might want to get a little bit more granular with regards to the percentiles, and as I said, be honest about your particular experience level and qualifications, and let that guide you towards, am I going to look at the 10%, 10th percentile, 25th percentile, in that kind of range, or if I'm mid-career, maybe the median and the average numbers, or if I have advanced degrees and am much more experienced, I might be looking at the higher end of the range, the 75th or 70th percentile numbers. I just thought of this early this morning to add this slide, strangely, but to find the salary database, you need to go to the STC website, either access.stc.org, that'll take you straight to the login page, or you can also just go to stc.org and click the login menu item there. That'll take you to, well, once you've logged in, I should say, go to the Member Center heading, and then from the drop down there, click on My STC Profile. The catch is there that My STC Profile looks like a heading, not a link, but it actually is a clickable link. And that will take you to your own profile page. I've shown the corner of mine here. And over on the left-hand side, underneath your information, is a link to the salary database publication. And there's also an Excel workbook. What that is all of the tables on that 185-page document are made available as an Excel workbook. And the nice thing there is that because it's not a PDF, you can rearrange the rows in all those tables based on a particular column or other. So I think they're typically arranged by the average column. It might be the median, I'm pretty sure it's the average. But if you prefer instead to arrange them all in the order of the 75th percentile column, for example, you can do that. Non-members, of course, haven't paid their dues, so they don't get this benefit, and they have to pay for the salary database. They can do that, again, just through stc.org, click through Member Center Salary Database. It's $125 for the PDF and $60 for the Excel workbook. They're available separately or together. So that's it. Overall, the salary database doc, it's got lots of good information. I encourage you to read that executive summary and to look up the information that applies to you. Follow those steps that I outlined earlier. I mentioned being objective and that these are guidelines, not standards, because there's more to a company's compensation package than just how much it pays, of course. So that's it. I see I've gone a couple of minutes over. Sorry about that, but thanks for listening. And Bob, thank you very much for asking me to do this. If anybody has any questions, or if there's anything in the chat, please go ahead.
I don't see any questions here in the chat window. I have one. I was interested to first of all, thank you, Jim. It was very
you're
good.
Very welcome.
What you went through. I'm interested in, are the ratios listed in the salary database? I know that I thought it was very important with the cost of living and how you were, especially sample 3, how you were showing how to weight a wage. Are those percentages listed anywhere in the report?
You mean the differences in cost of living in different places?
Yes.
No, they're not. But they are. You can get that info, and I've done that myself. As a Canadian, these data are all for U.S. locations. So what I need to do as a Canadian is go online. If you Google cost of living calculator, you'll get lots of hits. You get lots of results back. So I'd suggest picking one of those, and often they're in the format of, you can type in your own city and another city to compare it to. So what I've done is, okay, I type in Waterloo and I look for a city in the US that I think might be similar in terms of cost of living. So as it turns out, someplace like Buffalo or Rochester, which both happen to be not too far away, are more or less similar. So if I want to use these data, I'll look at the Buffalo or Rochester geographies when I'm looking for that. And you can do the same thing in the States too. If you live in an area that you don't see, which I think I'd be kind of surprised, but you can, for example, if you want to compare yourself against another city, use one of those cost of living calculators, and you'll be able to see how, $5,000. If I've got a $5,000 a month budget in city ABC, to have the same standard of living, what will I need in city XYZ?
Right. Correct.
And usually they'll present the information in that way, and you can calculate a ratio, be it 1.2 times or 0.9 times or whatever.
We have a question. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's kind of along the lines of best practice. The typical person, who would you approach? You've got all this information, but for your wage increase, should you approach your immediate manager or HR?
That's a good question. I guess that depends on your particular company and what the culture is there. If it's performance review time, I would expect to approach the manager first. Usually that's the person who's most familiar with your work, most familiar with you. HR might, most places where I've worked, I would expect them to defer to, they would, take your request back to your manager anyway and ask about, about your work, about your experience. HR is usually more about what the standard range is for your particular job title at your particular company. So they would want to talk to your manager if they wanted to give you a more senior job title, for example, or promote you into a role with more responsibility. That might be a way to to get a higher wage or a salary increase. Or you may feel as though you're doing that job already and you want to get the recognition for it. Either way, I would lean more towards talking to my manager first, and then dealing with HR, depending on the outcome of that. Okay, well, we will definitely send these out, and we will also put this recording and the slides on our neostc.org website. So others in various chapters, if you're joining us today, you can also you can go out and grab the information from our website as well for your members.
So James, thank you again. This is valuable information. I know some of us have used this to get our own increases in pay, so I thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.